Hey, everybody. Welcome to the November Q&A. If this is your first time here, welcome. What we do every month is first Sunday of every month, we do a Q&A that the questions are fueled in from our Patreon group. So if you are in the Patreon group, I went through all of the comments and the questions, both from the chat in the chat room and the comments, a couple emails, gathered and kind of combined some of those so that way we could all kind of jump in and glean from those together. Now, normally those questions are based off of the monthly to-do list that I put out. So if you are watching this as a recording on permaculturefx.com, every month we do a free gardening calendar for USDA zones 3 through 8 and then through 9 through 11. Now, I realize that it's not a perfect match all the way across the board. Within every growing zone, there are nuances and changes that need to be made. And not even all zone 9s are the same. California zone 9 versus Florida zone 9, there are differences in those seasons. So it is important to pay attention to your local climates. But this does give a good checklist and a launching pad of basically where to start. So every month in our Patreon group, so if you go to patreon.com/permaculturefx, we have a community of us there that we do classes every month, PDFs, that sort of thing. So before we get into the Q&A, just want to remind patrons of what we have on the schedule this month. So Q&A obviously right now is with your questions. On November 14th, you're going to be getting on the abundance tier the land observation PDF worksheet. So it's something that you can take out onto your property, onto your site, and kind of go through and gauge various areas, whether it's water, soil, land composition, traffic areas, identifying zones. So there's a kind of a worksheet for you to do on your own property there. And then we'll also have a separate PDF that week. We're going to do two in that week as well. So those of you that are wanting like gardening scriptures, these are ones that I pray over my own garden. If that's not really your vibe, then you can totally ignore that. It's just a second and additional PDF this month. Sunday, November 19th, all tiers, we're doing the top 10 soil amendments class. So these are the top 10 that I use any growing zone. When I lived in Michigan, these are ones that I used. When I lived in Kansas City, Missouri for 15 years, use many of these. And then there's a few that I've added in here in Florida just because I just have recently learned about them. So just some great ones that I love to add into the mix during the growing season. November 27th will be our food, forest, and spotlight tour. And then just as a reminder, there's a discount right now on people that want to do consultations on their property, and Patreon members, you get 15% off if you book in the next couple weeks. So those are the announcements, I guess, of the night, of just things to look forward to over the next couple weeks and over the next month. And then December, we'll do a lot of stuff still in December. I know it's really busy, but I'll try and do more PDFs that month that you can kind of use on the go, that you can listen to in the car. I'm going to do actually a MP3 release that month. So if you are driving for the holidays, doing road trips, you can just put it on the MP3 player in the car on Bluetooth and just listen kind of as you go. So before we jump into the 8 or 10 questions that we have tonight, you are welcome to join in the chat if you are viewing this live. Obviously, if you are watching this as a pre-recording that you just found this video randomly on YouTube, you can try adding your questions in the comments below, but you won't be interacting with us live unless you've gotten like mad, crazy time warp skills that I certainly don't have. But if I did, I'd probably get rid of this gray. I'm noticing the last couple of months, like, where did all this gray come from? Was moving on to a new property that stressful that I've gotten gray really fast? It really wasn't that bad, but it is funny to see all that gray coming in. So before we jump in, top 5 things that I would be doing in the garden, depending on your growing zone. So I want to talk to those of you that are in zones 3 through 8 first, because it's just chronological order. So 3 through 8, these are the 3 things that I absolutely would be doing if you don't do anything else in the month of November. These are the 3 things that absolutely try and get these done. I know it's hard, especially with the holidays coming up, but y'all, you will not be sorry. You'll not be sorry, because we all know that once Thanksgiving hits, nobody is doing anything until the first of the year. I mean, no, well, you'll be doing two things: jack and squat. Nothing. I mean, nothing gets done until the end of the year. So try and get as much done as you can. I know it's really challenging this month, but we've got a couple weeks left before the holidays start. So first thing that I would say is, if you're in zones 3 through 8, this is your last call for wood chips. I hate to say it, and I hate to quote like Game of Thrones, but winter is coming. It is just on its way. Some places are already getting snow. I know my parents up in Michigan, the wood stove is on, and they heat with wood all winter long, only wood, literally only wood. And they're, 60 years old and just chopping wood and, doing the thing, living their best life. But it's cold. The cold weather has officially started. In the Midwest, the first frost has hit. I've seen so many pictures of friends and clients in Kansas City and Missouri and Iowa, Nebraska. They're like, oh, well, my garden's done. And to be honest, there is something beautiful to that, the ending of the seasons, that the gardener gets a rest and the soil also gets a rest. In Florida, there is no rest unless you go inside and jump in the air conditioning or whatever. But this really is your last chance to do wood chips and get your soil covered. I'm gonna have a drink quick. So garden beds, if you didn't do a cover crop, use straw. That's going to be your best option. Just get the soil covered. No bare soil over the winter months. Well, really, no bare soil ever, but no bare soil over the winter months. So get things covered. You can use bag leaves, but I'll be honest, we shouldn't be bagging our leaves. We just shouldn't. I mean, if you think about it, the tree in your yard spent all year growing all of that growth over the top. All of those nutrients, the minerals, the nitrogen, the carbon, all of that came from your yard. Why would you want to get that off your property? Why would you want to send that out to the road and give that to somebody else? Absolutely not. Leave the leaves the best that you possibly can in areas like not your front yard. If you're able to leave them on the ground, it's a great habitat for the moth cocoons and butterflies and honeybees and native insects. Like, they really do need that cover. So if you are able to leave it, that's the way to do it. If you're not able to leave it and you really do have to have, just the grass over the winter, then at least bag up those leaves and compost them on property. And if you don't have a compost pile, run over them a few times with the bagging mower, the push mower, or whatever you got with a bagger on it. Bag them up and then dump those chopped leaves on the garden, and they'll decompose before the springtime, promise you. So it'll be really good biomass for your soil, but try and leave those fallen leaves the best that you can. So second thing, if you are in USDA zones 3 through 8, spring bulbs. You will not be sad that you didn't plant spring bulbs. I have never once had a springtime when I lived in Kansas City for 15 years and I was like, I got enough allium. I got enough crocus. I've got enough muscari. I've got enough daffodils. I got enough tulips. I've never once said that. Every spring, I'm like, I should have bought 5 more bags, and so if you can find them on sale somewhere, the clearance section, buy them, because in zones 3 through 8, you can plant winter bulbs literally all winter long. If there's a frost or a thaw, then just dig a little hole, put the bulbs in, and you'll be so happy come springtime. But this is your window. You're in the last window to get that garlic in the ground. The daffodils, tulips, crocus, muscari, I mean, all of that stuff. The alliums, Allium giganteum, oh my gosh, it's like softball size. Absolutely beautiful, stunner. So get those things in the ground and you'll be happy, happy, happy. Also in the Midwest region, zone 3 through 8, third thing, things are dormant now, so you can go ahead and start pruning. There's many, many good books and resources on pruning. That may be a good video option for patrons maybe in the next couple months. But how to prune a fruit tree is it's an art that you just continue to grow in, continue to learn. But this is the time of year. We never want to be pruning trees when the sap is flowing, when there's a lot of water. In the Midwest, you don't want to be pruning trees ideally when there are leaves on the trees. Save that for the dormancy season. So again, USDA zones 3 through 8, last call on wood chips and soil cover. plant your alliums and start pruning your fruit trees. Now, if you're in zones 9 through 11, we have a little bit of different things. Now, yes, number one, wood chips, wood chips, wood chips, wood chips. And people always go, you always say that. Now, isn't there something else that we should be doing? Probably, but it's probably not as important as putting dang wood chips on the ground. Cover your soil. It's going to be better for your soil, better for microorganisms, better for the mycorrhizal fungi. It's going to be better for those fruit trees. And honestly, it's better for your sanity because it lessens the amount of weeding that you have to do later on in the season. So definitely get doing the wood chips. Start the fall pruning if you want to toward the end of the month, and you can use that as some wood chipping material. Though never use the same wood chips on the fruit tree that you got it from because you don't want to spread those diseases. So if you prune from a peach, don't put it on a peach. If you prune from an avocado, don't put it on an avocado because you don't want to spread those diseases if there's a disease branch or something. Now in zones 9 through 11, the end of the month, you could start pruning. You could if you wanted to. We're still getting a little bit of rain off and on. So I usually wait until December, usually right after Christmas is when I start. However, mangoes, you do need to prune mangoes. Between now and Christmas, this is your window to prune those mangoes because starting January, they're going to start flowering. So you don't want to be pruning once it flowers. So if you got mango trees, you are officially in that season. Now, avocados, as soon as they're done fruiting, they're starting to go in dormancy. So wait a couple weeks and then go ahead and start pruning. Now, some of that depends on the variety because if you've got Fantastic or Joey, those are fruiting in like August, September. You know what I mean? Now, Winter Mexican, that could have fruit on the tree until February, but wait until it's done fruiting before you do your pruning. So you want a tree to be in dormancy before you begin the pruning. So second thing, if you're in zones 9 through 11 is chop and drop. This time of year, chop and drop everything that you can. Pigeon peas, moringa, Mexican sunflower, vetiver grass, lemongrass, whatever it is, chop and drop. You can bury it with wood chips so it still looks nice and neat. So it doesn't have to look like a hot mess around the food forest. But you are in the window to go ahead and start doing that on the chop and drop. Third thing that I'd be doing 11 right now is it is annual vegetable season. Hallelujah. I mean, it's been a long summer. It's been a long, dry summer. So annual vegetable season, my tomatoes look awesome. I mean, they look so good this year. Peppers are looking good. I'm doing quite a few varieties of tomatillos and poblanos. My favorite pepper this year is probably the Cap 455. Joshua Jameson at Cody Cove Farm. Fantastic. And any growing zone can grow 455. It's just Cap 455 does awesome in Florida. It's kind of like the better Florida version of a bell pepper. They're just smaller, but they're sweet and they're juicy. So I really, really love those. But right now in the annual vegetable world, I'm doing kale, getting kale in the garden, brassicas, peas, Swiss chard. Those are going in the ground now. And you can keep doing seeds, beet seeds, potatoes, any of that stuff. Just get it in the ground right now. So those would be the three things. Again, if you're in zones 9 through 11, number one is wood chipping and beginning the pruning process. Number two is fall chop and drop. And number three is the annual vegetables. So the part we're all waiting for, and I'm going to go ahead and get my notebook out here because I always write down the questions. I love pen and paper. I think it's because I was a teacher for 15 years. There's just something about pens and paper. And I just found this great new pen website, Jet Pens. I don't get any money from them, just so you know. But they've just got such good pens. And I bought this brown sampler pack. So all of my pens right now are brown. And I literally nerded out. This has nothing to do with gardening, but it's my dang live broadcast. So I'll do whatever the heck I want. But I wrote down the name of the pen and the model or whatever you want to call it of the pen, just so I could see how well it wrote. And now, do I want to use this for journaling? Do I want to use this on the go? Do I want to use this in my brainstorming book? All the nerdy things. So Q&A for November. So again, these questions come from our Patreon community. And so that's where they come from every single month. So Question number one. What are some good seed saving tips? How do I do it? Where do I put them? All the things. For me personally, I store my seeds. I bought one of those. They're actually like the 4x6 photo storage boxes from Michaels or Joanne Fabrics or whatever. And I store seeds in those. I and color code them. So I have like all my tomatoes in a red case, and I have my eggplants in a purple case, and all my carrots and root crops that are in what is that? An orange case. So I can color code things and I can label them, and that just makes my OCD really, really happy. That's for me is the best storage unit is those, because then it comes in like a briefcase and I can take it out to the garden. I can bring it back inside and then it fits up on a shelf, and then I can stack, multiple of them. And I think it's got 12, I want to say, cases per big case. And so for me, I have found that to be my absolute favorite way to store seeds. Now, some people I've seen take the 6-inch PVC pipe, put a cap on one end, throw all their seeds in the other end, and then recap it. And then they put it in the freezer. That does work. I've had good and bad things with freezer storing. So typically location, number one, you don't want any light. So closets are great, in a garage is great. Number two, you want it to be climate controlled because humidity can make them mold, and they're just not going to last as long. So you want it to be air conditioned or semi air conditioned, no hotter than 75 degrees, preferably. And then obviously dry. So if you have a lot of moisture problems, take those moisture absorbing packets, put them inside, and you should be fine. But you want to keep the humidity down, keep the temperature down, keep the light down, and then just store them away, and forget about it. And seeds are usually good for a while. I've had some, I kid you not, that I forgot were in a freezer for 10 years. 10 years. And I had like a 70% success rate. It's not great. It's not bad, but it'll work, So, seeds will save for a long time. If you're in doubt, do a germ test, a germination test. So a couple weeks before you're planting, put 5 or 6 seeds in a wet paper towel, put the paper towel in and just see how many germinate. And that's about going to be your percentage of success. So if you've only got a 7 out of 10 success rate, you maybe want to put 2 seeds per cell when you plant them in the springtime, but that's pretty much it. So second question is, where do I like to buy my annual seeds from for annual vegetable gardening? So when I was in the Midwest, I mainly got them from Baker Creek, rareseeds.com, prairiemoon.com for all things native wildflowers. I really, really enjoyed them. But a lot of their seeds are really specialized for the Midwest. So now that I'm in Central Florida, I find myself getting them from like Seed the Stars on Etsy is my absolute favorite place. They have most of the things that I want to grow. There's a few things that they're just now getting the last couple years, but I like them because they're acclimatized to the zone 9, 10, and 11 weather, which is, things that have grown for 10 years in Missouri, which is where the Baker Creek is. They just seem to take a long time to be adapted for our climate because it's so harsh in these hotter climates. So for subtropical regions, find someplace local if you can. Otherwise, look on Etsy. To be honest, Etsy has a lot of local stores. They're small batches, and I've had amazing luck getting things on Etsy. Now, the one downside, you don't always know if it's going to be slightly hybridized with something else. So I've gotten like Seminole pumpkins before, and they were kind of Seminole, but they were probably also butternut squash hybrid. I don't care. I'm eating them, and they grew great. So for me, those are the places. If you have places that you enjoy and you're watching this live, please put those places down in the chat. Love to see where you guys are growing from as well. So if you've got some great recommendations and you're watching live, put them in the chat. And I believe people that are watching this post live broadcast, you can read those comments at a later time as well. Number 3, what do we do about cassava plants? How long do we grow them? How do we store them? How do we propagate them? So cassava or yucca, not the same as a yucca plant. Yucca is I feel like it's a great buffer crop. It's like end of the world doomsday scenario, and I'm probably going to love cassava. For the most part, I grow them a lot and I just forget to eat them. I'll just be totally honest with you. So the general rule with cassava, when I'm the most successful, I'll tell you when I'm the most successful. When I'm not successful, they get composted. So the most successful ones that I've had over the last several years are if I put them in the ground, put the cutting in the ground, and then I tell my phone, hey, personal assistant, set a reminder for me for 10 to 12 months or 10 months from today to harvest cassava group number 3. So then what I do is on that fence line or in that area, I tag that group of cassava number 3. So then when the alert shows up on my phone, I know what group of cassava I'm going to be harvesting. Now I do the same thing with sweet potatoes actually, but those can store in the ground a long time. The challenge with cassava is after the 10 to 12 month window, they get really fibrous and really woody and they're almost inedible. They're just not good. So if you don't harvest them on time, if they're older than 12 months, I would just forget about the roots, just trash them or compost them, and then just take 6 to 8 inch cuttings of the stem and then just save it for cuttings and do better at remembering what ones you've got planted for later on. So that's what I would do with the cassava. Cassava cuttings, I've had those 6 to 8 inch cuttings last literally for like 3 months in a shed, and I put them in the ground and they still grew. Now, once in a while, I'll grow them in pots. I'll just stick them literally in a pot, let them grow there, and I'll put them out in the springtime. Usually, if they're in the ground, I'm laying them horizontal. So if it's in a pot, I'm doing vertical. If I'm doing it in the ground, it's horizontal because I have more nodes that are in contact with the soil. And that seems to really work better for me. So again, I would just use your digital personal assistant or set a calendar reminder and let that calendar remind you how to do it. So question number 4 was also on cassava is what do I do with the cuttings? So that question again, 6 to 8 inches long on the cuttings. And for me personally, I have the best luck. I go vertical if I'm planting them initially in a pot to root in. I just do horizontal in the ground if I'm putting them in the ground because there's more node contact and you get way more cassava roots from it that way. Let's see, question number 5, moringa harvesting. So part of this is when do I do it? So as much as you can. Honestly, for me, for moringa, I don't like moringa to grow as a big tree because they're lanky. They're kind of dorky looking like me. They're just kind of a little dumb tree. I don't think they're beautiful by any means. There are many other trees that I think are more beautiful. So for me, for moringa, I think it's best to either coppice it, which means cut it off at the ground like as a stump every 3 months, or pollard it, let it grow off the top. And I think I've shown on some TikTok and some Instagram videos several examples of that. I like that better because it's easier to harvest, both for me personally, if I'm using it, but it's also easier for animals and livestock. So for me, that's been a way better method. I harvest moringa about every 3 months. If you've waited until now to harvest moringa, do it. Get it done now. Most moringa trees are going to start yellowing this time of year, which also means the nutrients are going back into the tree, into the root, because it's going to be going dormant soon for many climates. So I would harvest your moringa now. If you get another harvest, count it as a great blessing. But I would say now is a great time to harvest moringa. Now for storage, I dehydrate mine on about 120 degrees for about 5 hours until they're nice and crunchy. Put them all in the Vitamix blender, and then I turn it into a powder. And then literally, this is one of my little powder packets. This is my container I use on the dog food because it's great for animals as well. So sprinkle a little bit on dog food or on cat food, high protein, high amino acids. And then I put a little oxygen absorber on the inside. My personal use, I do it in salt. I just literally do half moringa and half sea salt. And this is one of my absolute favorite ways to store moringa seed because the salt actually helps preserve it. And then you literally just use it as regular salt. You don't taste the moringa. So you can do it on your eggs and soups and stews, on chicken, on steak, on potatoes, macaroni and cheese. If you're that person, I'm that person. So that's one of my weaknesses is macaroni and cheese. And I get organic, but I know it's still terrible for you. But I put moringa salt on it. I feel like 3 points better. So I get +3 to longevity, in that, to use video game language. So, moringa salt, To me, that is the easiest way to actually do it. And then how do I store pods was the last part of that. Super important. Pods need to dry completely on the tree until they're nice and crunchy. Otherwise, the seeds may not be developed enough to actually be viable. So once those drumsticks are crunchy, you're good to take them off the tree. I shuck them immediately. And then I take the little white flaky stuff off of the seeds because that's not necessary. And then you can store those the same way you would any other seeds, just in a cool, dry place. Or you can eat the seeds. The seeds are really yummy. You can pan roast them. There's a lot of great recipes for roasted moringa seeds, which are really nice. They're kind of like a chestnut meets a hazelnut, I feel like, or a pine nut maybe. So they're pretty yummy. So that is the thoughts on moringa. Question number 6, Mexican sunflower. How do I overwinter this? Don't. I would just skip it. Mexican sunflower, pretty much in all of zones 9 through 11, is super hardy. It's going to die back to the ground, but it's going to come back. So I would say if you're going to be using it as a chop and drop, as soon as it's done flowering, because you want to enjoy the flowers, the blooms, because they're beautiful. I mean, mine this year are fantastic. I've got them cut in the house. I have been giving them away. I'm watching the pollinators on them. I've got like these bumblebees that are just hanging out on them and just chilling all day long. They're adorable and they don't sting, which is great. As soon as those Mexican sunflowers are done flowering, chop and drop them or feed them to your livestock. You can leave them growing, but I would say as soon as you get a frost warning, just feed everything to livestock or chop and drop. Livestock don't love Mexican sunflower once it's browned. So I would say, just watch until you get a frost warning and then go ahead and cut them back. And I would cut them back to about 8 or 10 inches tall if you're doing the Tithonia diversifolia. So that's the big, tall yellow one. So 8 or 10 inches tall is totally fine. If you're doing the yellow ones, most of them have already gone to seed right now, the rotundifolia. But now is still a great time to seed save, spread them around pastures. They're just going to go wherever they want to go. But remember, those stay shorter and they just kind of move around everywhere. And if you don't have anywhere to put your seeds, go throw them in a ditch somewhere and do some good guerrilla gardening. So question number 7, can you go through some tropical spinaches and what do I do with them over the winter? Now, tropical spinaches, you can grow in the colder climates. You've just got to bring them inside for the winter, which is awesome because you might get a few leaves, here and there, but then you get this great high density nutrient green. Now in USDA zones 9 through 11, they are going to be frost sensitive. So personally, I take insurance cuttings now. So I'm literally, anytime I'm eating tropical spinaches, longevity, Okinawa, Brazilian, whatever it is, I'm taking that stem and I'm sticking it in the dirt. None of the tropical spinaches need to be rooted in water. You can literally just put them in a pot of soil, leave them in the shade, and they're going to come back and they'll be fine. So let's go through a couple of those tropical spinaches. So longevity and Okinawa, because they're cousins. Longevity, remember, is the green. That's the ground cover. The Okinawa has the similar shaped leaves, but it's more upright in its growth, and it has purple undersides, more anthocyanins, more antioxidant health. So both of those, great to take in right now for cutting. So again, anytime you're harvesting them, just save those cuttings and you'll be good to go. But I'll be honest, even if you forget on Okinawa and longevity, as long as it's above 19 degrees, which if it gets below 19, beloved, all of Florida is dead and all of California is dead. So if it gets below 19 degrees, okay, at that time you need to take in some cuttings, but above 19 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit, Celsius, where did that come from? What's in my tea? So if it's above 19 degrees, you don't have to worry about it. So no problem. Brazilian can be a little bit more tender. So if there's one that you're like, I really want to take in just one cutting, probably the Brazilian, the Sisu. That's going to be one that you want to go ahead and take in as a cutting. Suriname spinach and Jewels of Opar, those are cousins. Those usually will spread by seed. So right now you should have those little seed heads and they have these little kind of pearls on them that almost look like dried BBs. And if you just pop those and sprinkle them, That's going to be the best thing to do to reseed those. Those are very sensitive, so you can take a cutting, but they reseed very prolifically. So that's the easiest way to do it. Just let nature run its course. Chaya, to livestock that does have hydrogen cyanide in it, so you do want to be careful of feeding that to livestock. And the last of the tropical spinaches is Katuk. Katuk is going to die back the first frost. I mean, Katuk is super wimpy. You can bring cuttings of it in, but mine always comes back. I've never had a problem with it. Now, if you are Ocala and north, you're definitely going to want to bring cuttings in of Katuk for sure, because that may or may not come back. So, question number 8. What do we do to prepare animals and livestock for the winter? So this is, let me talk about USDA zones 3 through 8 first. So first of all, if you're in those colder climate zones, you need right now to be thinking about a warm water plan. So how are you going to prevent that water from freezing? Whether that's a bird bath de-icer, one of the heated waterers, or you're bringing it into the garage. Oh, that's what I did in Kansas City. Is every night I would bring my water into the garage. I had one thawing and then one in the coop, and then I would switch it the next day. And so that's really what I did. The salt water in a jug, that never worked for me. Not even once did that ever work. Also in USDA zones 3 through 8, you need to be thinking about good airflow. It is a myth that you want to airproof and draft proof your chicken coop or your duck coop or your whatever bird coop. You do need airflow in there. That good airflow moving prevents humidity from accumulating, which that frost is what's going to be damaging to the feet, the combs, and the wattles of your chickens and your animals. So you do want some airflow. So do not button that thing down like Fort Knox. You do want some good airflow. Do not use heat lamps. I don't care how cold it gets. Those animals are going to be just fine as long as you're doing other things. Heat lamps, you're asking for fires. I have literally a half a dozen very close personal friends that have had sheds, chicken coops, one that burned down an entire barn. I mean, a massive barn, and lost hundreds of animals because of heat lamps. Please do not use heat lamps. I don't care if it's radiant or whatever in the winter. That's just pure stupidity. But what you can do instead, feed corn, feed suet cakes, feed high protein. Those calories are going to heat up those chickens' bodies, and they're going to produce their own heat. Let them do their own thing. If you are really concerned, you could do a deep bedding method. So instead of cleaning out the chicken coop, every couple days, throw in a few handfuls or a sleeve of fresh straw or fresh hay or whatever you have. Do a deep bedding method, because that deep composting is going to be good insulation and a little bit of radiant heat, and that works really, really well. Now in USDA zones 9 through 11, we don't have to worry about that. And that is one thing that I really do like. However, we do have to worry about worms, parasites, bacteria in the winter months. So this is a great time for your deworming or your anti-parasitic protocol. Pumpkins and pumpkin seeds are not a dewormer. There is zero science to back that up. Sorry to burst your bubble. But what I do the basic H method, and that has worked really well. Add probiotics into the mix, add apple cider vinegar. Winter's a great time to do water additives. So for me, every time I change the water, I'm doing something different. So maybe one time is fresh water. The second time I'm adding colloidal silver. The next time I add maybe a few drops of basic H. Maybe the next time is, did I say apple cider vinegar? I can't remember what I said already. Maybe the next time is a handful of dried herbs, like Italian seasoning. Works great. Maybe the next time is garlic. Maybe the next time is honey. So pretty much this time of year, all animals on the farm, I'm rotating things through their water just to build that immune system. And then occasionally I'll do fresh water. So that's the kind of the main things for USDA zones 9 through 11. Everybody, if you have chickens and fowl and that sort of thing, it is molting season. So just brace yourself. There's no way to get around it. That's what their bodies are supposed to do. That is good for them to molt. So what's interesting to me about molting season, so number one, those feathers are falling out. Now think about what those feathers are made of: calcium, B vitamins, and proteins. Those are the three main things that make up those feathers. Now, think about what also stops during molting: egg laying. Egg laying slows down. What are eggs made of? Calcium, B vitamins, and proteins. So the reason why you're not getting as many eggs is because their bodies are putting all of that energy to repair their feathers, to grow new feathers. So if they're slowing down, it's okay. It's actually a good thing. Let their body be in a natural rhythm over these fall and winter months. Let their body slow down. Let their body have rest. Let it have a Sabbath. That is what their body is supposed to do. Please do not add in supplemental lighting into your chicken coops, because the planet needs a rhythm of shorter days. So do animals. You need a day of rest as a human being during the week. So do animals. So when we add in that supplemental lighting in our chicken coops, what that does is that increases the vitamin D production and tells their bodies, oh, it's springtime. I got to start laying eggs again. Yes, you are going to get eggs, but you're depleting and weakening their bodies and their immune systems over time. So let them have molt, let their egg production slow down, and just focus on building their bodies. So, what I think is really interesting, our creation is knit together so fantastically well. I mean, not only do the birds slow down egg laying when their body is producing those feathers, but this time of year, one of the best things that you can add if you're in zones 9 through 11 to your garden is feather meal. And so the birds are losing those feathers. I'm collecting them and raking them up in the chicken coop, or the kids on property are. And then I'm paying them this year to make feather meal. So it's a fun little business that they're starting. And so it's a great way just to watch how nature is so intricately and wonderfully made. It is fantastic to me. So if your birds are in molt right now, increase B vitamins, increase protein. A couple creative ways that you can do it for B vitamins. If you've got extra lettuces and greens that are about to go bad, that's a great way. Moringa is a great way to do that. Any of the collards, family, that sort of thing. Buy a thing of cabbage and stick some cabbage for them into the chicken coop. I like to do cabbage on a wire with an eye bolt on it to make like a tether ball, and just watch them like peck at it like chicken pinata all day long. So it's a fun one. So just get creative. You can actually take like peanut butter, smear peanut butter like on the wall, and press bird seed, like wild bird seed, and just let your chickens just go to town and do it. A couple times I've done is taken an old xylophone, a kid xylophone that I got from a garage sale. On the bottom of the xylophone, I'll put like dollops of peanut butter with a bird seed, and then literally they learn to play the xylophone. Even when you're done with a bird seed, that spring, I noticed the birds would literally just peck it to like make cool sounds. Like, I just think it's fun. Probably doesn't have any health benefits to them. A couple other fun ways: suet cakes, the wild bird feeding suet cakes for birds, for woodpeckers. You can put those suet cake cages in your chicken coop, and those are wonderful sources of protein, healthy fats for them. Some bird seed in them. I like to watch the label, because they'll give you the crude protein and crude fat. And so I would look for a protein level that's at least 6 to 12, 6 to 14%. There's a lot of cheapos out there that are like 1 to 5%, which you're just getting fat, and the birds don't really need that. They need the protein. One of my favorite ways to do protein, hands down, are buying cheap minnows from a pet store or a bait and tackle shop. Put them in a cookie sheet or a shallow dish. Dump the live minnows in there with just a little bit of water, and just watch the chickens. And it is hilarious. And you're getting omega-3 fatty acids. You're getting amino acids, you're getting protein, and honestly, it's just fun. It's a great winter boredom buster. So when you're at the feed store or the bait and tackle shop, or you're at Petco getting stuff for your animals, literally just spend a couple bucks and get a big old bag of minnows. Doesn't even matter what kind, just feed them and have fun with it. So last two questions. How are my chickens doing? If you didn't see on social media, I did a hatch, and the hatch was mildly successful. It wasn't the greatest hatch I've ever had. Primarily because I was trying to hatch some eggs from some really old birds to keep that DNA, and they just weren't real viable. So on hatching day, I went to a store, was going to get some heritage breed birds. And I went in, and the lady, long story short, she ended up going, "Hey, we're getting some new birds in. These are normally 5, $6. I'll give them to you for $1 a piece." And I was like, "I don't want to hurt your business. How many birds would you give me for $1 a piece?" And she was like, "Oh, I'll give you all of them." And I was like, "I only came in for 5 birds. I was gonna be good. Y'all, I was not gonna give in to chicken math, but I did. And I came home with 61 birds last week. And literally, like, I got them in. And for the rest of the day, I'm like, okay, I need this tub. I need this tote. I need wood chips. I need the water. I need the feeder. Okay, where's my brooder? Where's my heat lamp? Where's this? Where's that? I mean, getting everything set up. It was a mad rush, but it was awesome. I had a blast with it. I mean, literally, the rest of the folks on the farm and my local friends were like, dude, you are nuts. Why would you bring home 61 birds? Why would I not bring home 61 birds? If I pass up that deal, I'm just plain dumb. Now, the real reason I wanted the 61 birds, because by springtime, I would like to have 1,000 birds on property. So what we're doing is we're actually, well, actually, I'll get to that in a minute. So birds are doing great. We had one or two of them that just had pasty butts so bad they just didn't pull through, but they're doing awesome. They've got their first set of feathers in, even though they were straight run birds, which means they were all sexed at the beginning, supposed to be all hens. That's never true. That's never ever true. So there's a couple in there. They're definitely roosters. The way that you can tell is on like day 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The hens will all have tail feathers first, and the roosters will not get their tail feathers for like another week. And so I know there's some bald butts in there that I know are roosters. So whatever, it's the thing. So the last question that somebody had, and this is where I'll get into the chicken thing, is tell us about the farm that you're on right now, that you're at right now, and some of the things that are going to be happening over the next few months. So I just moved over the last few months. I've been here 3.5 months. We have 265 acres. We have about 135-ish cattle. It's the second calving season just started, so I don't actually know today how many we have. Mostly Black Angus, registered genetics, and some Hereford Cross, a couple Wagyu in there, some Charolais. So what we're wanting to do is rotate chicken tractors through the pastures after the cattle are done. One, because it's good for pasture health. They're scratching, they're fertilizing. We feed a lot of raw seeds, dried seeds to our chickens. So literally whatever passes through them that they don't digest is replanted in the pasture. So they're planting our pastures. They're scratching, they're fertilizing, they're getting the bugs. And one of my favorite things, they scratch apart the cow poop and they eat the maggots of cattle horn flies. So it's a great fly control on the farm. So we're going to run those through not only for cattle health, pasture health, for fertilization, for soil health, but also starting this year, we're going to be selling pasture raised eggs, the rainbow eggs. So a carton of great, many varieties of heritage breed birds. We are not doing any of the Cornish rock or Cornish cross. I think they are Frankenstein birds that have really bad genetics, and I should do a video on it because I've spent years researching that breed, which is literally 100% of the bird that we buy from the grocery store. So we are doing all heritage breed birds. So we'll have great rainbow eggs, and then we will be doing some meat birds with those heritage breeds. So I want to have 1,000 birds on pasture before springtime, because we're going to be not only in January, February, starting to sell some of our beef from the pasture raised beef, but we're also going to be starting to sell some of the eggs and some of the chicken meat for those that are looking for a source for that as well. So that is it. So if you have any other questions, you are welcome to put them in the chat here below. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. Again, every month, the first week of the month, we do these live broadcasts, the first Sunday of every month. And so if you're in Patreon, you can always add your questions there. So question here from Astra Gardens from David. If you were to plant a food forest with only one fruit tree, what would you be? Oh, that's so hard. Oh, okay. If I was in, I already know what it would be. It's any USDA zone. It'd be a mulberry. Hands down would be a mulberry. The reason why because one, they grow in every USDA zone. So literally zones 3 through 11, there is a native mulberry tree in all of those zones. Second reason is in all of those zones, there are everbearing or semi-everbearing varieties. So even in the colder climates, in Michigan, I just brought up like 25 mulberries to my parents this year. There are some that will produce all summer long in the mulberries. So not just spring or not just fall, they'll go kind of all summer long. So mulberries definitely. So it's all USDA zones. It bears almost year round. And then the third reason, the leaves are great for animal forage and fodder. And they're great for humans to make into a tea. Tastes just like green tea, but there's no caffeine. And it has good antioxidants, vitamin C, minerals. So that tree, I think, is absolutely fantastic. Can be grown as a tree or a shrub. So if I were to do a food forest with one tree, it would definitely be that one. I have to do an honorable mention, because it's my broadcast. I'll do whatever I want. So if it's in the warmer zones, avocado. Y'all, if you know me, you know I'm an avocado fanatic. So even when I first got onto this property, we put in like 5 65-gallon avocados because I cannot wait for them to grow up. Like I need fruit immediately. So what did I do? I did a Marcus pumpkin. I did a Brogdon, which is my favorite for guacamole. Mexicola Grande, great all-purpose. Fantastic, which I know is not fantastic, but it's bulletproof. And on the years that everybody else is just sucking at life, Fantastic does okay. And it at least gives me an avocado. And Winter Mexican, because Winter Mexican is my favorite slicer and dicer, stays on the tree until February. So there will be more avocados coming. And I did put in 12 seedlings that are grown from seed. But there are definitely more avocado varieties coming. I've got a couple in pots right now that are going to stay in pots until Easter time because it's not good to put them in the ground right now. But on Easter, they're going in the ground. I've got an Oro Negro that's going to go in the ground, a Wirtz, a Pancho or Pancho, depending on who you ask, and a Bacon, I think, is the other one that I've got. So, and then if I guess my honorable mention, if I was in USDA zones 3 through 8, I'd be doing apple. I love apple trees, and they just don't do well in Florida. People trying to grow apple in Florida, just give up. Just let me tell you, just give up. Even if you're in North Florida, the best apple year in Florida, the best apple year is like when you go to the grocery store and you get an apple and you eat it and you're like, that was not a great apple. That's Florida's best apple year. It just is, So there's just other things that we can grow really well. But if I was in the Midwest, definitely apple. That's a good question. Let me just talk about that a little bit more. But because you got to have an understory. So if I was in the Midwest and I had to choose one understory to put under it, it would be currants. I love currants because they're so juicy. They're so sweet. The flowers smell like vanilla. They're really pretty. And they're just a really prolific. You just get a lot of berries on currant. So that would probably be the one for the Midwest. My berry bush for Florida, Patangatuba. I really like yellow star cherry. It's that good flavor of like citrus meets a pineapple. And it just has such a long fruiting season. I mean, mine were fruiting this year from like June until September. I mean, it's a really long fruiting season. So that would be my honorable mention there. And I won't do any more honorable mentions. I will respect that question. So again, thank you guys so much for joining. And again, for the Patreon community, thank you so much for your support, for your messages, for tuning in on the live broadcast. If you are not in our Patreon community, you can find us on Patreon, Permaculture FX. And we do broadcasts, we do classes, we do PDFs, we do farm tours, we do a lot of exclusive content on there because honestly, I think it's a really important way for us to connect without the craziness of social media and really go deep and go far together. And honestly, for me, I am a content creator and I'm not a gumball machine. And so I'm not going to put out everything on social media because this has taken me 25 years to study this. And so I don't think it's actually right to put everything on social media. So if you are not on Patreon, love for you to check it out. Otherwise, thank you again so much for tuning in, patrons. Thank you so much for your love, your blessings, your support, your prayers. Thanks again, everyone. I will see you in the garden.